So I brought you here today to take a look at G2's path to success. And I think G2 definitely has a very specific path, a very specific way how they've defeated every single team in a best of 5. G2 as a team can draft better because they inherently play way more champions. I mean, technically whatever team wins, what they do becomes meta since their tactics are evidently the most successful. Sure, that's true, but how would you define a G2 meta if they won the World Championship? You can't. If you look at the quality of this World Championship, if you compare it to previous World Championships in terms of reaching that perfect game, we are so fucking far from it. These semifinals were some of the messiest semifinals I've ever seen in the history of League. And the reason is because the game is so fucking wide open. And the reason G2 is excelling is because no matter what, I feel they can take a step back and analyze situation real time. And when it comes to all of these other teams, like SK Telecom, I feel like they are lost in this space where the meta has shifted too much throughout the championship. They're the best in the world at after 15 minutes when mid-game hits, late game hits. They understand very well tempo and understanding where they should be on the map, and they have very good understanding of waves. This is what is giving them such a big edge. And on the opposite side, SKT had no clue. They were basing on uneven timings, always slower to decide. They were not forcing any errors. They were not pressuring into the jungle because there was this respect always from G2. G2 had an inherent strength of adjusting to the enemy. So G2's strengths coming into this best of 5, what needed to be highlighted is that G2 has by no stretch of the imagination been like some incredible early game team. It's just the truth. When G2 win early games, they slaughter you. They slaughter you. You can see in the series between G2 and Team Liquid, when they played against Team Liquid in the best of 5, they got early game leads, and what happened to them? They lost every game in 20 minutes. G2 forces you to do everything perfectly. If you don't, they will find the window in. The series that I wanted to highlight from G2 is the Down 1 series. The mindset of G2 was that they recognized that enemy bot lane is actually not that good. Damon's bot lane was a problem, and I felt like in these games the G2 recognized it. They gained a lot of pressure through bottom, and Perks and Mickey were having a very fun time in this game. I feel like also what G2 recognized was that they don't need to focus on 2v2 mid, and they need to just make sure that Caps is always put in a better 1v1 matchup. That's how you deal with Showmaker. Showmaker and Canyon never interact together. They never do anything together. Showmaker is probably the mid laner that has the least amount of jungle proximity. The beauty of this as well is that they are locking in Jace every game. Jace was a very particular pick that was specifically curated for Nuguri. He wants to play Kayle, he wants to play Vladimir, he wants to play Jace. Take Jace away, and still Daumon was sitting in a position where they were locking in Kayle. So Nuguri was never an issue. Jace was getting prio early on. Gragas was able to do as he pleased because he had prio top and bottom. And as long as G2 made sure that they had a better matchup in mid lane, they could suffocate any type of play that Tama wanted to do. So Jace's pick brings a good matchup. It brings a good matchup, you can blind pick it, and you can make sure that you get a better mid lane matchup because of it. They're picking Jace early to make sure that Caps has a better matchup. Always. Lock in Jace, blind pick it. You know it's going to be good into any champion that Down 1 play in the top lane. Because Nuguri wants to play Klepto. He wants to play Klepto Kayle, he wants to play Klepto Vladimir. You don't want to pick these things into Jace particularly. And then later on, Jace was just catching waves while his team was pressuring, and Jace was making sure that he doesn't die. That was Wunder's job this series, was to lock in Jace, make sure you have decent matchup, make sure you can 2v2 in the early game, and then later on, your job is done. Your job is done. If Nuguri doesn't snowball, doesn't get ahead, all is good. So let's continue to game 2. Game 2, after this, they forced a Syndra ban, and this is where I think G2 kind of troll draft. So this is where G2 realized that we actually don't want to play Renekton. We don't want to play Renekton, and Orianna Alistar is a trash bot lane. So this was just a disgusting draft. But even this game, Damwon had such a hard time. They had such a hard time winning this game. Such a hard time winning this game. Super, super difficult. Because G2 is tough to win against. Unless you play macro perfectly, and you give G2 absolutely no window to do anything, then you're going to prevail. And that's a very difficult task. It's much easier said than done. But this draft is really trash. Like mid Cleanse Flash just automatically wins the game. Rise into Elite Renekton, Cleanse Flash. A game winner. Top matchup. Nuguri played this matchup really good, honestly. Considering this is a counter. Jace counters Cannon. And Nuguri played this super, super well. And then bottom matchup is just honestly super free. Game 3. The Jace continues. Here, the Yorick is a very special pick from Wunder that he has into Jace. This is something that we've seen many, many times. Here, Damwon was tired of this fucking Jace lock-in. They tried to steal it away, but Yorick was lurking around the corner. Here as well, the way G2 managed the Yasuo Gragas lane, they did it at a level that was super, super high. And already here, you can see that Damwon needed to drop all their bans and they needed to shift their bans to Syndra and to Kai'Sa. And then, Syndra and Xayah. And then when they lost Kai'Sa, they had the Yasuo prepared. And imagine being so fucking silly to pick Yasuo into the Yasuo Masters. They stacked a big wave because Yasuo Gragas cannot contest the wave, and then the dive happened, and it was a very quick and pain-free game for G2 because they had an early game lead and they transitioned that into a victory. Caps didn't play for lane because Showmaker is one of the best laners in the world. One of the best laners in the world. And Caps just pushed. He just pushed and walked around. Beautiful. Beautiful adjustment. Game 4. We had the Yasuo mid lane roaming into top lane. And then the weird part here was Kayle was locked into Yasuo, which I thought at the time when it was locked in. When it was locked in, I thought it was fine. You know, I thought it was fine. But Caps showed something very beautiful here, that Yasuo can play for prio and roam. Yasuo has prio against a lot of champions, but including me, almost every Yasuo player is so boiled into slicing up the enemy that you forget that he has so much prio and that he can transfer his pressure across the map in a very, very interesting fashion. So here, G2, I felt like in this series, adjusted very well to their enemy. They had a very, very good idea of draft. They came in with a very strong idea. They forced Damwon to adjust, and the moment Damwon adjusted, they looked so much worse. They look worse and worse. When we take a look at the next series, right off the bat, first game, G2 just had a way stronger grasp of what the world's meta was. So that is the biggest kind of question mark when it came to SKT. Coming into the series, I felt like they had glaring weaknesses. And I felt like G2 truly exposed them. So from the get-go, what we see is that if this game goes on for long enough, G2 is going to outscale the enemy. Kled scales better than Renekton, Ryze scales better than Neeko. If you itemize Mercury threads and you have, if you just itemize Mercs, you're going to outscale this team. While SKT need to be the ones building an advantage and then forcing onto the enemy. And this has never been SKT's strength. SKT was not good at Worlds. At the same time, I think G2 drafted better. They drafted better in this particular matchup against SKT. And people are saying like draft is like, just draft. Well, drafting is super fucking hard. Drafting is super fucking hard, and playing all of these drafts is super fucking hard. When you're forced in a position to draft so fucking cocktail, you no longer know what you're doing. That always happens. Every best of 5 we've seen so far between G2 and a different team. Look at the last game of the series, how the enemy team is just collapsing. They have no idea what the fuck they're doing anymore. They are collapsing. They are collapsing. Look at this. What's going on here? What's happening? You have Elise, Vladimir. It's like, this is weird, you know? It's kind of weird. What happened here? What the fuck? What happened here? What on earth is this? What the fuck? Beautiful. Nuguri, Irelia. What has the earth gone down to? How many games of Irelia do you think Nuguri practiced coming into this World Championship? 0. 0. Maybe some solo queue. It's not about a player playing a specific champion, it's a team understanding the nature of the champion. And that's what makes G2 so good. They play so good as a team around every specific champion. Everyone needs to, of course, play their champions individually good. But what G2 does so well is that they are playing as a team so good. They're playing as a team so good. Together they recognize the weaknesses, the strengths, because they have such a good grasp of the power of everyone. The power level of everyone. Their game knowledge is through the roof about the individuals. But actually SKT did not play bad early games against G2. They didn't. But did it matter? Did it matter? It didn't matter. I cannot even imagine the world where someone thinks that SKT played better than G2, because the only thing honestly SKT did was they won their lanes. But it didn't mean shit. It didn't mean shit because when mid-game hit, they didn't find a way to pressure. They didn't find a way to pressure. They didn't find ways to do anything particular. And in my eyes, this is not saying G2 played perfect. It's not me saying G2 played perfect, because I think both teams made a very long list of mistakes. Very long list of mistakes. We can sit here and analyze G2 and all of the fucking crazy shit they do wrong. For sure. But every time with G2, the weird part is G2 are not stuck in a trend. That's the big thing. G2 is not stuck in a trend where they continuously do the same shit over and over. You know, they are not stuck in some pattern of how they need to play the game. And that's why G2 is coming out ahead. It is always far from perfect the way G2 is playing. Even in this series they played fucking bad in a lot of scenarios. But their mistakes are not a pattern that you can abuse. You cannot come into a series and say, G2, we're going to abuse this problem that you have. SKT's path to this semifinals was not impressive. I've been trying to say this for a very long time. I think if SKT faced IG in IG's quarterfinals form, IG would win. Oh, so this was beautiful. This is another thing where G2 is so amazing in their own way. So yeah, Caps died. Caps died, and then G2 is like, okay, we're gonna trap SKT. 4-man, most of the time, most teams are like, shit, Caps died, what do? We need to do something. Sure, it's a big mistake that Caps died, he shouldn't have fucking died. But here, G2, the fact that they find this catch here, Faker dies, boom, and then they save the situation. Beautiful play from G2. SKT didn't see this coming. And the fact that G2 is so fucking patient that they let every SKT member pass here. Leona passes, and then they're like, okay, omae vamu shindiri. Boom, Faker dies. Very, very nice. It's not random that G2 happens to be in a better draft most of the games, except in group stage against Griffin. No fucking chance. They got completely outdrafted. And Griffin should be praised for this. They had a beautiful draft. And G2 had no idea what the fuck they were doing. No idea. They were fucking lost. Lost against Griffin. The drafts against Griffin, they got pounded. This was G2's asshole after Griffin drafts. We continue. G2 are very limited in their options of how they can pressure, but I still felt in this game if they didn't force, they could have looked for better timings. Let's take a look at this game. So this game, once again, if we analyze the draft, G2 put themselves in a position, so good adjustment here, first pick Rise, okay. They put themselves in a position where once again they're going to have a jungler that is going to transition them from the early game without bleeding too much into a point in the game where they're going to outscale the enemy. Once again, it's the same shit. many teams rotate into mid lane right away because that's the natural thing to do because you expect the enemy to defend. Here they're calling SKT on their bullshit because SKT didn't rotate fully with full man. They are getting the advantage here. Very nice play. The question of did SKT play better? You know, this situation, this troll here, this disgusting play here has nothing to do with draft. That's why it's so awful bad for me to hear that G2 were winning because they outdrafted. SKT have a bad draft. They're not gonna win this game. No, man. No. The best approach for FPX is to come in with the series with as little set bans as possible. As little set bans as possible, and then they're going to be in a much better position. So here, fucking SKT, they don't know shit. They don't know a shit about the draft before. They have shown 4 picks and they don't know shit. And honestly here, it's just the draft is too good against Qiyana. You can talk about however you want about how Faker played or how Mata played, but G2 draft was next level here. G2 are favored in this game, and I think in these fights they played better. So just to make it clear, you know, I don't think that SKT played better than G2. But at the same time, I think that G2 definitely drafted better than them. That should be no surprise. That's a strength of theirs. Coming into the finals against FPX, we can expect them to do better drafting than FPX, based on what we've seen in this tournament. But FPX also is a strong drafting team, so maybe it won't be the focal point. Here in this game 4, usually in last games of series, this is what games against G2 look like. You are forced to be playing champions that maybe you don't want to play, and you're doing it because you are afraid. So, for me, for the prediction, I think G2 is going to win 3-2. The reason why is that I think G2 can be better than they were against SK Telecom. I think FPX showed some weakness in later parts of the game when it came to mid to late game, and G2 is very prone to abuse that. I think G2 is going to win because G2 has shown throughout the World Championship, except in group stages because it's too difficult to do in group stages, in best of 5s, they adjust to the enemy. They adjust to the enemy. They adjust draft, they adjust play. Coming in to the series against FPX, FPX has a very set way to play the game. They use a lot of effort to make sure they have mid prio, use that mid prio, make a boom swing play onto a lane, and then slowly they grind you out. So FPX is better than any opposition that they've had so far. We look at the matchup. FPX has this way of playing where they play hard on mid prio and they spread that pressure. Crisp and Tian, best in their position in this tournament. Best in their position. This is what is going to make it hard. They're going to make it hard, you know? Because they are super good at finding ways to prioritize through mid. And that's the biggest question mark and worry for me, is that G2 haven't put that much emphasis on mid lane as a team. To beat FPX, you need to contest 2v2 mid. That's how you beat FPX. Every team that has ever beaten FPX is through mid lane. Don't give them any room to do anything through mid. I would say G2's lane phase definitely needs to improve. Their early game planning needs to improve. I think that's a weakness of theirs. The issue is that no one has contested FPX in the mid lane 2v2. And G2 will bring that to the table. And that's why I think G2 is going to win.